Hey there, my friends. It's Patrick from Stop Doing Nothing. And today we're going to talk about some of the good things that actually came out of the pandemic. And I say that like the pandemic had a start point and it had an end point. And we really know that if you're a science person, it doesn't have an end point. But that doesn't really matter because we're all great human beings. We're all going to keep on learning and growing. So stay tuned as we talk about 5 of the great things that came out of the pandemic here at Stop Doing Nothing. Hey, welcome back again. This is Patrick Allmond from Stop Doing Nothing, and today I'm going to cover 5, I was going to say great things, but let's just say pretty cool things that came out of the pandemic. Now, real quick, if this is your first time here at Stop Doing Nothing, I run a marketing agency, but I also cover self-improvement and things that I've learned over the past 2 or 3 decades that I want to communicate to you to make you a better person, to help you make more money, to help enrich your life, to help with your physical and mental wellness. And I drop, a podcast and a YouTube show about once or twice a week. So please make sure if you're on YouTube that you click subscribe below and hit the bell, ding, ding, to get notified. And if you're more of a listener, make sure you subscribe at stopdoingnothing.com/podcast. And of course, we're available on iTunes and every place else. And lastly, if you're more of a reader, you can hop on over to the blog at stopdoingnothing.com and just pick the blog menu option and read the text of what I'm going to talk about here. Now, we're going to go kind of fast. I don't do long shows sometimes. So here are what I consider the 5 good things that came out of the pandemic. Not great, not awesome, not amazing. Just, when it comes to perspective, 5 decent things that came out of the pandemic. Okay, number 1 is we all became a little more independent. Now, what does that mean? Well, a lot of people had jobs and they had to drive in every single day and drive back and live on the highway. And we just kind of we were a little bit more dependent on our physical location being, kind of what qualifies us to do a job. And what we learned as a result is, maybe we can work from home a little bit. Maybe I don't need to be in the office. Maybe, if my job is somewhat dependent or if my finances are somewhat dependent on my physical location someplace, maybe I can come up with another job or another skill or something where I have a little bit more independence. Maybe I can make money off of my brain. Maybe there's a way to live my life that doesn't require me to, spend an office job 9 to 5 inside of a conference room someplace. So I think that when kind of push came to shove and we were desperate for certain things during the pandemic, we got a little bit more creative and a little bit more independent with our thoughts, the way we made money, the way we ran our lives. We just realized that we could be more flexible than we had been in the past. So it forced us to learn some new skills also, which is another point I'm going to get into. We learned more about technology. We learned more about how to get things done online that were kind of optional online, where, they weren't optional anymore. And things like that. So we just became a little bit more independent thanks to technology and thanks to, we kind of had to do that push come to shove thing and figure out a way to get things done when we had no other options. If you couldn't go to the DMV and stand in line and be within 6 feet of people, then you had to come up with a way to get that done. So we became a little bit more independent, and I think we are better off for it. The second point I want to cover with you is that if you were a person who wasn't that great at technology, or you were just so, all of a sudden the pandemic forced you to get a lot better at technology. You can't see it here in my home office, but at the beginning of the pandemic, when I realized I was going to be doing a lot less things in person, I dropped a couple grand on making a halfway decent home studio. And if you look behind me into that side or that side, you notice that, the camera is pretty good, the lighting's pretty good, things are pretty good. Why? Because I had to get better at technology. And for someone like me who lives in the world of technology, it was pretty easy to adapt and get better at technology. That's no big deal. But for people like my mom or other people out there who are technophobes, who really don't want to get anywhere near technology, well, you know what? They all of a sudden had to get out their iPads, get out their iPhones, and take advantage of all the technological things that are offered in those devices. Companies like Apple and Samsung and Dell and Microsoft have been making technology better and better for us over the years to make our lives easier. And they drop in cool features, which we use sometimes, but all of a sudden we had to use those features more. They weren't optional anymore, they were required. So we had to learn how to do stuff like buy our groceries online. Before, that was convenience for a lot of people, but all of a sudden it became a matter of life and death. And so if you were someone who was maybe immune compromised, or it wasn't very safe for you to go out during the highlight of the pandemic, or if you're someone who was maybe a baby boomer and you're a little bit older and you're more of a high risk, well, guess what? All of a sudden, you can install a grocery app on your phone and shop. Before it was optional, all of a sudden it became kind of a required thing. We learned how to have meetings online. Oh my goodness. 2020 and 2021 were the year of Zoom and Microsoft meetings and Microsoft online teams and Google meetings. Man, that stuff was optional before, but all of us got really good at Zoom all of a sudden in the beginning of 2020. I haven't checked Zoom stock recently, but I would imagine they are doing pretty good because all of a sudden you're getting invites to this thing called Zoom that you had never installed before. Had to install it, had to get good at it, really good and really fast. We also learned to do stuff like scan documents and send them online, pay our bills online. Now, for those of you who are very tech friendly, you'll know that we could do these things before 2020. Those weren't hard if you're a person who lived in technology, but all of a sudden they became less of an option and more of a, we have to do this kind of thing. So if you had to scan a legal document, and in the olden days, you might go to Kinko's, make a physical copy of it, and mail it to someone. Well, you know what? What if it's just not safe for you to get out of the house? Then what do you have to do? You got to use your trusty iPhone. Got to keep mine right here. Take a picture of that document, scan it, turn it into a PDF, and email it to somebody. Things like that were second nature for some of us, all of a sudden, your neighbors, your friends, and your family who are not so technologically friendly had to learn how to do that stuff and make it required. So we got a little bit better at paying bills and doing things online. So that's number 2. We got better at technology. Number 3, on the flip side of the consumers getting better at technology, all of a sudden companies had to get better at providing us technological services via technology. Companies like grocery stores or utility companies or pet stores or all these places that were kind of dabbling in the world of online ordering and dabbling in the world of product delivery, they had to get really good really fast. So, I have to admit, we would on occasion order groceries from, a grocery store online before the pandemic started. Not always. I was still a fan of going in the grocery store, but I can promise you that once the pandemic hit its height, or its peak, if you will, that's almost all we did. We didn't go to a grocery store at all. There was probably a good 9 to 11 months there where I didn't step inside of a grocery store at all. I wanted to, and that's kind of the odd thing nowadays is, I can get stuff delivery, but I want to go inside of a grocery store and I want to go inside of a gym. I want to be around people, but we had no choice. So the grocery stores had to get better at delivering this stuff to us. It was obviously a great time to run the company Amazon because all of a sudden everything in the world that you could possibly want, you could get delivered by Amazon. I'm going to say that 2020 was the year of the Amazon box being on your doorstep every single day. I don't know about you, but there are periods of times in my house where there's an Amazon delivery every single day or every other day. And all of a sudden your garage gets stacked up with Amazon boxes. Same thing with stuff like coming from your pet store, or even the basics like toilet paper or air filters or coffee, or in my case, I have a big giant thing of protein shake that I drink every single day. All of these things that were kind of convenient before became necessities in order for businesses to stay in business. And this is very true of your local restaurants. And this is what was somewhat of a challenge, is it actually broke some local restaurants. When you do food delivery, there is not a lot of margin there. So when you account for the overhead of the kitchen and the overhead of the delivery company and the overhead of the delivery driver, all of a sudden the margins get very thin and some companies folded as a result, which was very unfortunate out there. However, the ones that did adapt and the ones who, they had to bump up their prices a little bit, they did adapt, they did overcome, and they are still in business, which really warms my heart. But companies basically had to get better at technology, adding delivery services. In the world of things like DoorDash, food delivery, I'm sure that took off like a boom. All of a sudden now, we have a whole new industry, which was just dabbling before, but we have a whole new set of people that maybe have lost their job someplace. Well, now they can get into something like DoorDash and they can deliver food for these companies that all of a sudden have a high demand for food delivery. I wouldn't go as far to say I've ordered, just a single bagel before, because I've seen that in a comedy skit on the internet. But there are things where I have ordered like a single meal before. I just make sure it's it's enough for it to be 2 meals. So like something from Jimmy John's, or if I want to order barbecue, I'm going to make sure it's going to be 2 or 3 meals worth of barbecue. So that was number 3, is that companies had to get better at delivering technological services to us. I'm going to say number 4, and this is one that we can all question due to our political and our religious leanings. I think that there is a group of people, or I'm not going to say sect, I'm going to say a subset of people out there that all of a sudden became a little bit nicer and a little bit more understanding towards each other. As you all know, whether it's online or offline, there are times right now where we are fighting online and we're fighting offline about pandemics and requirements and all that stuff. And a lot of it is political, some of it's religious. But for a lot of people, and I have to say, I believe I'm one of these, I really don't care. You know what? It's a pandemic. I don't want to get sick. I'm doing whatever I can to not get sick. And I'm a little nicer to my neighbors and my friends and family, because we're all going through some stressful shit right now. And, I think that during this time, those people who were able to take a deep breath and have an understanding that it's just as hard for my neighbor or my mom or my dad or my sister or my wife or my daughter or my son. It's just as hard for them as it is for me. And whether or not I like their political beliefs, I'm going to be a little bit kinder to them. And to tell you the truth, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Christmas when, all of a sudden we're a lot nicer to each other during Christmas. I would say right now, and definitely in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a group of people out there where we were just a little bit nicer to each other. I could walk out in my front yard or exercise going down the street, and we were just a little bit nicer to each other. We may not walk on the same side of the street because it wasn't healthy, but we'd walk across the street from each other, and we may laugh a little bit because we're all walking with masks. But we're just being a little bit more understanding and a little bit more forgiving, because we all realize that we are just, you always hear that people, be careful, be kind to everyone, because everyone's going through some crap. Oftentimes that crap that everyone's going through is hidden, it's buried. I don't know what my neighbors are going through, but you know what? For 2020 and 2021, I am pretty sure they were in the same pandemic that I was in. So I knew some of their crap. So yeah, it felt a little bit like not Christmas time in the giving way, but the fact that we were just a little bit nicer to each other, because it's either that or we yell and scream, we claw each other's eyes out. So that's number 4. You may or may not agree with me. I just thought there was a group of a subset of the human race that was just a little bit nicer to each other, because it's just so hard to cope with what we had to cope with. And number 5 here, the last one, and this is one of my favorite ones when I scroll down my notes here. Number 5. So and looks like number 2, I was talking about you got better at technology if you weren't already good at technology. Number 5, if you were someone who was pretty great at technology, man, this was your time to shine. You're training people how to use Zoom. You're training people how to use Microsoft Teams. You're helping people buy microphones and mixers and lights and cameras and stuff. I was kind of into this stuff before 2020 came. I've done some work in recording studios. I've done some video work. I'm on TV on a regular basis. So I had a good foundation of lighting and sound management and how to build like a little miniature home studio. So I dumped a good chunk of money in the beginning of 2020 to make a decent home studio. But what I noticed is, that skill that I had, most people didn't have. So I would be on Zoom calls with other entrepreneurs, other people working from home, other professional speakers, and I would get asked a lot of times, how do I do this? How do I have good looking Zoom calls? How do I share documents? How do I collaborate on spreadsheets and Word documents remotely? How do I share my screen so I can do remote training? How can I, stand up and wear a microphone so I can teach the group of 50 people that I was supposed to fly to and teach? How can I teach them from my home office? There was a lot of demand for people like me that were really good at technology. People like my mom would want to know, how do I order the stuff online? How do I have it delivered a certain way? How do I have it delivered overnight? Just so if you were someone who was really good at technology, 2020 was your time to shine. All of a sudden, we became educators of technology, and we showed people how they can do things online. So before then, if there was somebody who was a little bit older who wasn't used to scanning documents, and I keep looking down because I have a paper document right here in front of me and my phone, Normally, using the example I had used earlier, we may have had somebody who may have been used to just taking a paper document and driving it down to Kiko's, making a copy and mailing it. Well, all of a sudden, those of us who live in technology all the time know that, what, if I use Dropbox and I use my phone right here and I take a picture of a document, Dropbox will turn that into a PDF and I can email that to somebody. So if I have to get documents to my attorney, or I have to get documents to someone at the government level, or someone needs a copy of my driver's license, I can do that now using technology. So number 5, again, is it was really a boon for those of us who had embraced technology over the years. If you know anything about me, you know that I've just been a tech geeking nerd person since probably the age of 9. And, I'd say the truth, probably even before then. But it's just my world. I just eat and breathe and live technology. And I will buy anything in the world that has the Apple logo on it. I drank that Kool-Aid a long time ago. So number 5, again, was a chance for us to slide show. As a quick recap for those of you who may be watching here towards the end. Number 1, we became more independent and we learned some new skills, which kind of was a good thing. Not a great thing, but was a good thing. That was our first good thing to come out of the pandemic. Number 2 is you got better at technology. Not quite the same thing, but you got a little bit better at technology when you basically had to be forced how to learn to do things when before they were kind of optional. Number 3, the companies and the governmental organizations and the service providers got better at technology also, using that technology to deliver solutions to us, because we were told to stay at home and hide under the cabinets and not go anywhere when it came to technology. Number 4 was it was all of a sudden Christmas time, and the fact that we were nicer to each other. We were nicer in a car ride. We were nicer passing our neighbors on the street. We were nicer at times when we did have to go to a physical building and be next to someone. I think we were just a little bit nicer. Some people got a little bit more mean, but a lot of people I know were a little bit nicer, just a little bit more understanding. Again, because we just all realized that this was a ton of crap we had to deal with. And number 5, again, as a quick recap, if you knew technology already, then this was your time to shine. You became a trainer. People hired you to teach them how to do great things like home meetings or live streaming. Oh, that's something else. Yeah, live streaming became huge in 2020 and 2021, where before it was a novelty and a convenience, all of a sudden it became a requirement. So those are the 5 things I think that came out of the pandemic. I hesitate to say great things or awesome things, just 5 really cool things that came out of the pandemic. And if you're looking for a reason to say, you know what, it wasn't too terribly bad, not counting the death and the sickness and the cost of things, here are 5 things that if we made it through there, we kind of came out a little bit better on the other end. So as always, I'd love your comments. Feel free to tweet me. Twitter account is at Patrick Allmond on Twitter there. You can always obviously Facebook me or Instagram message me. I'm not hard to find. I'm Patrick Allmond everywhere. And as always, if you're listening to this on iTunes or any kind of podcast platform, do me a favor and leave us a rating. Hopefully a 5-star rating. And if not a 5-star rating, then maybe just message me or text me and let me know why you didn't think it was a 5-star show. And if you're watching this on YouTube, as always, click the subscribe button below. I'm not sure on my screen if it's going to be over there or if the subscribe button right there or right there. But somewhere down there on YouTube, there's a subscribe button and a little bell to click on to get notified when a new YouTube show comes up. Again, this has been Patrick Allmond from Stop Doing Nothing. As always, I wish you peace, love, and hopefully this has been educational for you. And make sure you watch the next show or, one of the 120 previous shows we've done. As always, take care and have a great day.